Hi, good evening. Welcome, everyone.
Get started in about 2 minutes. All right, lots of people coming in.
Thank you, everyone, for being prompt. We are going to wait. We'll get started at 6:02, so less than 1 minute. We appreciate you being here on time and for joining us this evening.
Well, how's everybody doing?
Doing great. It's great to see everyone here. All right, we'll get started in about 30 seconds. Get this webinar started. Good to see everyone here. Okay, hello and good evening, everybody. It's great to see everyone here. My name is Robert Carr, and I am the chair of the messaging working group for the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition. We would like to welcome to our 4th webinar of the year, Electrifying Your Home. This webinar will focus on local San Diego examples of residential building electrification. All right, so today's speakers are Tom Abram, and he is an energy engineer and project developer with Mesa Energy Systems, where he helps commercial and institutional customers reduce their energy costs and become more sustainable. Tara Hammond and her husband, Justin, co-founded Climate Hammond Solutions with a mission of expediting positive change for a just, livable future. The organization focuses on climate project management, policy, and advocacy. And finally, we have Wendy Mahalik. She is a Little Mesa resident and will be sharing the journey of her path of electrifying her home. Now retired, Wendy is an active volunteer with SD350 and a believer in the benefits of building electrification. So a quick few norms about today's presentation. All attendees will be muted. If you have any questions during the presentation, please add them to the chat and we will answer them at the end. Also, we'll be recording this webinar. The agenda for this webinar will be as follows. The presentation will start by introducing the SDBEC, its mission, and the resources it has available to help the building electrification transition. We will then discuss at a high level what building electrification is, how we can electrify our buildings, and why it's so important to do so. Then Tom, Tara, and Wendy will follow by describing their journeys of electrifying their homes. They will discuss available building electrification residential technologies, their successes, challenges, and informed tips electrifying residential homes like yours. That will be followed by a Q&A session, and then from 7 to 7:30, we will have breakout groups at the end where attendees can ask their questions directly to our group of experts. Okay, so I'll start off by introducing the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition, so SDBEC. We formed in November 2022 to advocate for building electrification. It's a coalition of community, environmental, civic, and labor organizations. We are currently talking with other local groups to expand our coalition. We provide educational presentations to the public, like this one, and are developing BE training programs for builders, installers, and homeowners. Our goal is to reach out to cities in the region and advocate in favor of BE REACH codes, which are codes that go beyond the current codes, so the modification of building codes, to require all electric in new development and ban any new gas hookups. As you can see here in this graphic, the logos of our are the logos of the environmental champions that make up the SDBEC. Although we are currently advocating for all electric building code in new construction homes and buildings to prevent any, this is to prevent any new gas infrastructure from being installed, we realize that eventually all buildings will need to be converted to be all electric. This is why we're discussing retrofits of existing homes in this webinar. Now I'd like to hand over to Tom to start this discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Robert. So if you haven't picked up on it, we're here to talk about building electrification. And what we mean by that is by eliminating natural gas combustion in lieu of all electric appliances and heating systems. We'll be talking about how we can do that in existing, primarily existing single family homes, although there are some tips and tricks we can apply for others as well. And why is this important? For many reasons. One is primary one is climate. So 10% of greenhouse gas emissions in California and about 15% of greenhouse gas emissions in the San Diego region come from combusting natural gas in our homes and businesses and in other buildings. So we need to address that. Health benefits. So there's been a lot of research around the impacts of gas cooking within our homes, lower costs, especially as we look at new buildings, eliminating an entire system of gas infrastructure. And when we pair it with solar, we can reduce ongoing costs as well, even in areas with higher electric rates. Increased energy efficiency, especially heat pump technology, and then finally public safety. So we've seen several incidents from natural gas pipelines rupturing, and we want to avoid continuing that infrastructure. So I'll be talking about my home, the eCorinthian, as a case study. But along the way, I'll explain what these technologies are and how you might be able to apply them to your own homes. So our home is all electric. It's located in El Cerrito, San Diego. 1,500 square feet, and it was built in 1949. It did have a major remodel in 2015. It wasn't done for code, it's done to code, but wasn't done from any other energy and environmental standpoints at that time. So we purchased it after that was done. All right, so from a timeline perspective, we moved in April of 2015. We started on our path to building electrification that August 2015 when we put in our heat pump / air conditioner, and have steadily marched towards electrification since then. There's a flurry of activity in this last year with the pandemic, giving us a little bit of an opportunity to take some action here. And in December of 2020, we had our gas shut off by SDG&E. So first talking about space heating. So existing heating systems, you might have a centralized system, so furnace with ducting. It might be distributed with wall furnaces. Baseboards typically going to be electric, mini splits electric, and it could be oftentimes paired with air conditioning in some way or another. So the cheapest overall upfront cost is usually going to be maintaining the same distribution system. So if you already have central air conditioning with central ducting, that's likely going to be the most cost-effective action you can take to electrify. And what you would be replacing in most cases would be a gas furnace. So gas furnaces are going to combust gas to generate heat, and this is a conversion process. So we're converting one type of energy to another. So we're limited by 100%. We have conventional furnaces tend to be about up to 84% efficient, while condensing furnaces go up to 94, 97% efficient. But keep in mind, that means that all of that gas that you're burning is going towards usable heat. Even if it's 97% efficient, that means 97% of the gas you burn is going to heat, 3% is lost. So you're still burning quite a bit of gas in order to supply that heat. Now, a better alternative would be what we call a heat pump. And with the heat pump, we're moving heat from the outside to the inside. It's really just an air conditioner that's running in reverse. So what's interesting about this is, on a summer day, what we're doing with air conditioning is we're pushing heat from the inside to the outside using the refrigeration process. And even if it's 100 degrees outside, we're still able to push that heat outside, right? Heat pump works the same way. If it's 40 degrees out, 50 degrees out, we're still able to find usable heat to extract from the outdoors and push it to the indoors by using the refrigeration process. So effectively what that means is we're providing heat at 300 to 400% efficient, let's say. And that's several times more efficient than any natural gas furnace or an electric resistance heater, which are both limited to theoretically 100%. So what we're doing is we're taking 1 unit of energy to move 3 or 4 units of other energy, and that's that heat. So it's really, pretty common. The predominant heating systems in commercial buildings in San Diego actually are heat pumps, but the residential market hasn't been quite as fast to adopt that. So for looking at replacements, if you're looking to replace your furnace, if your furnace goes down, if your AC goes down, this is a perfect time to consider replacing it with a central heat pump. If you look at the 2 pictures at the bottom, if you squint, and even if you don't, you can't really tell the difference between the two. It's the same components, from the outside. There's just a reversing valve that lets the refrigerant flow backwards to allow you to heat as well as do air conditioning with the same pieces of equipment. Typically the outdoor units are going to be 240 volts. That's common whether they're doing heating or just air conditioning. The typical units for the indoor units tend to be 240 volts, even though the furnace indoor air blowers tend to be 120. But there are some options available to reduce your electrical demands or electrical changes. So there are 120 volt blowers. There's also some manufacturers that supply power to the indoor unit from the outdoor unit. So that can help reduce costs. If you don't currently have central air, if you don't have a central furnace, ductwork, etc., there are other options available. So let's say you've got a wall furnace for your heating, or you've got baseboards. Even though baseboards are electric, you still would benefit from going to a heat pump. And what we would look at, best option is going to be what we call a ductless mini split, where it's the same type of technology. We have an outdoor unit and an indoor unit. We're moving refrigerant back and forth to push that heat from where we want it to, we want to move that heat from one place to another. They also have technologies now where you can have one outdoor unit to multiple indoor units, multi-zones. Other options would be a through the wall heat pump or a window heat pump. So this is just like a window unit for an AC, but it can go backwards. What we ended up doing, we had central heating when we purchased the home. So we purchased the home, it was advertised with central air, but what that really meant was central hot air. So we got a little credit for that advertising boo-boo, and we're able to use that to put towards an air conditioner. We wanted to wait a little bit to see whether we can get through a San Diego summer in this neighborhood without air conditioning, and quickly realized that that was going to be difficult. So we decided to purchase air conditioning, and all we did was selected the heat pump option instead. So we did that. We had some limitation in order with the indoor unit because of the access to the attic. We went with a slightly higher efficiency unit. I would have liked to go a little bit higher, but there were some limitations on sizing. It's a 240 volt condensing or outdoor unit and a 240 volt indoor unit, and really just looks like the same as any air conditioner. Okay, so for water heating, so for the water heating, there's a few different options here. The standard water heaters in San Diego tend to be the traditional tanked gas water heater. This is pretty standard for for most homes in San Diego, or many homes in San Diego. There's been a big push in the last few years to move towards tankless gas water heaters. So the gas is being burned on demand in order to provide hot water. It does reduce standby losses from the tank style. It often requires upsized gas pipes, so you have to put in additional funding to increase the infrastructure costs. And at the same time, you're only reducing those standby losses. You're still burning gas in order to provide the heat to that water. There's a few different electric options. There's a standard electric tanked or electric resistance water heater. This is nominally 100% efficient. All that burning of all of the electricity goes towards heating the water. That doesn't include any standby losses, which you can eliminate by going to a tankless electric, but these are pretty beefy. So there's it requires a lot of juice, a lot of electricity at once in order to instantaneously heat water on demand like this. So invariably it's going to require, or in most cases, it's going to require a panel upgrade. The best option we have here is a heat pump water heater. So this is the most efficient option. It's 300 to 400% efficient. Because we're not converting one type of energy to another, we're just moving energy around. And the way that heat pump water heaters work is they're extracting heat from the ambient air and rejecting it to the domestic water. So just like a space heat pump is moving heat from the outdoors to the indoors, the heat pump water heater is just grabbing that heat from the outdoors, from the garage, wherever it's located, taking that heat and rejecting it into the hot water tank by using the refrigeration process. Very similar technology to air conditioners. Most units do have a backup electric resistance. When you see hybrid, that's what that means. So that helps if you're running out of hot water. It can help and provide some more hot water. I was running mine on hybrid mode for a while and I have it switched over to heat pump mode, so it'll only run the electric resistance in worst case scenario, and haven't had any issues with that. Current units are 240 volts, so if you've got a gas water heater, this does take a little bit more work in order to get the circuitry there, but there are some 120 volt plug style models coming in soon. There are some space requirements because we're sucking out heat from the ambient air. If you put it in a closet and you try and take all that heat, you'll eventually cool that closet down. If that's your situation, don't worry, there's a workaround we'll get to on the next slide. There's a $500 instant rebate from SDG&E and a $300 federal tax credit on those. So ours was, our existing water heater was a natural gas tank type. It was about 10 years old, which is, especially for some of the newer units, that's kind of about what you'd expect them to last with our water supply being a little on the harder side. So it's time to start thinking about a replacement anyway. We had a hard time finding installers to do this, and we'll talk about some of the work that we're doing in the training and tech working group is to find installers who are qualified and get them to support those who are trying to make these efforts. But luckily, have some experience, as well as having somebody, a friend who's pretty knowledgeable about this. I was able to do a self-installation, get that permitted, signed off. The water heater was located in an exterior shed. So I was a little bit worried about this because it's outside, limited. Remember I said there's space constraints. Believe it or not, I needed to put a different shed enclosure. The shed enclosure I had before was too small. And so it's a really tight space. But what we did is we ended up putting in, it's a duct kit. You can get it from the manufacturer. It's, pretty common. So that's what this white duct is coming out of it. Now that was a pretty tight installation. It was a pretty quick transition that air doesn't typically like taking in ducts. And so I was a little bit worried about the air making it, but it was fine. Haven't had any issues with that. And you could use a duct kit in order to pull air from another location or push it to another location, making it more feasible to put into a smaller location. The neat thing about this is when we extract that heat from the ambient air, we're rejecting it to the hot water. That air is now cool. It's a few degrees cooler. I'd say maybe 5-10 degrees cooler. And we actually use that to cool our house when when it makes sense from a climate perspective. So we have that air ducted into the house. We can turn that off, and I'll show you in a minute what that would look like. We do have a 240 volt smart plug to manage and monitor the load, so I could turn off and on the unit. Some of the newer ones do have smart grid capability, or you can control it with an app. But I can just use the brute force of off on, and that seems to do the job, as well as being able to monitor how much energy is being consumed. And then with heat pump water heaters, you do get some condensate water coming off of it. It's clean water, just water being rained from the air, and that waters our planter box. It's currently watering some strawberries. It's kind of what the system looks like. So I put, a little bit more time and effort into this aspect of it. Did some experimentation, definitely, cost a little bit more to do some of these things, but wanted to learn a little bit. And so, we can start with the outdoor air. We've got the outdoor air. It's extracting heat from that air, rejecting it into the hot water supply. And then that air is now cool, right? Because we took that heat and we used it to heat up our water. So I've actually ducted it into our kitchen whenever we want it. If we don't want it, I can close that vent. It's a smart vent. I can't say I'm totally thrilled with the product, but it works manually pretty well. And then if we don't want, if like it's 50 degrees outside, we don't want that air entering the space, I could turn that off and it relieves into the attic. And then I've also found out, surprisingly, if it's like 100 degrees outside, you don't want that air either, because it's maybe 90 degrees out, 90 degree air. So, eventually I want to get it to where I can get these systems to talk to each other and determine when to open up the vent on their own with my support. But for now, it's working really well. All right. So in terms of cooking, let's see. All right. So in terms of cooking, gas stoves combust and release pollutants directly into the living space. So if we've got a gas stove, you're burning gas, any of the byproducts are going to be entering into the living space. That includes carbon monoxide, nitrogen dioxide, formaldehyde, particulate matter. There's some recent studies that have shown that children living in homes of gas stoves actually have a 42% increase in asthmatic symptoms and a 24% increase in being diagnosed with asthma. And most people aren't running their exhaust hoods, is what the research is showing, unless the food is burning. And I know that's my experience as well. Unless there's a reason for me to run it, typically haven't run it in the past. And a lot of folks don't have vents that actually go outside. There's a lot of recirculating hoods. Let's just do a little bit of filtering and return that air. The response might be, but I hate cooking on electric. But that's, tends to be the traditional electric resistance coils, where you heat up a coil, it then heats up cookware, which then heats up the food. We really recommend looking into electric induction stoves. They've come down in price quite a bit. It heats the cookware directly. It turns off if cookware is removed, which is great from a safety perspective. Get good control. It's quick to heat. When I boil my water for the coffee in the morning, it's usually done before I can grind the beans, and very easy to clean. It also works with a lot of cookware, more than we expected. And what we did first, we weren't quite sure about electric. We wanted to check it out. So we got this portable plug-in induction cooker in 2018. We used it for the majority of our cooking for about 2 years. It's about $50, $60, depending on the model. They've got higher end models too, but I found that this one works just fine. It just plugs into our regular outlet. And we did it for most of our cooking. If we needed a second burner, then we would use the gas stove, the gas cooktop. But this is what we did most of our cooking on. We did end up replacing that gas range with the induction range in November 2020. I found that the full range is quieter and even faster than the plug-in unit, although it does require a dedicated 240-volt circuit. I'll do a quick plug for San Diego Green Building Council. We have an electric home cooktop program where you could loan out a plug-in induction unit to see whether you like it. You get the cooktop, you get a piece of cookware, a magnet to be able to test your other pots to see whether they would work or not. Check that out for a few weeks, see if you like it. So I'd highly recommend checking that out. That's an easy way to electrify on the cheap. I do understand a lot of this is directed towards single family homes, but there are some options to be able to electrify for those who aren't in that position, such as induction cooktops. From a dryer perspective, there's a few different electric dryer options. There's a standard vented dryer. It's just an electric resistance, so we're just burning electricity through a coil. It's the most energy intensive, but it does tend to be on the faster side for drying. There's a ventless or condensing dryer, not as common here, getting more popular, but very common in Europe. It's more energy efficient, and there are some combined washer and dryer units available, which is kind of neat. You can put your clothes in, it'll wash it, and then it'll dry it. And then, of course, our friend the heat pump is available here as well in the heat pump dryer. So this is, these are typically 240 volts. You might be able to find some smaller ones at 120. This is the most energy efficient option out there. So one of the, so in terms of what we ended up doing, we just went with a standard vented electric dryer, basically to match as close as we could our existing washer, which had not been replaced too long ago. So I wish I had been a little more future focused when selecting the washer, or a little less particular about getting the match. But at the end of the day, it was one of the smaller gas users in the home. It didn't require quite as much solar to supply when we did the conversion. Now our organization is primarily focused on building electrification, but I did want to point out to think about electric vehicles as part of this. We first got a plug-in hybrid electric van. It's about 30 miles on the electric, Chrysler Pacifica. And then we've got a Leaf as well, which is doing about 75 miles on one charge. And then we've got a juice box level 2 charger, which is grid responsive. This is very important, especially when we think about the electrical side, to make sure that we have full electrical capacity. So you want to plan out what exactly are you planning to electrify, and making sure you've got the capacity for that. Speaking of which, managing the electrical panel. So these retrofits do involve several additional electric circuits. It depends on the appliance, it depends on the model, but you are going to require more electric circuits, more load. Yeah, Gene, I got a used Leaf, but yeah, the newer Leafs are much better, and I think I got a bum battery, so hopefully I'll get that replaced soon. But yeah, a lot of the newer Leafs go quite a bit further. And sorry for not, I'm just grabbing questions as I can real quick, but we'll definitely have time for that after. So the electrical panel board is really the heart of this. It's taking utility power in and distributing it throughout the house. You have to make sure you've got available ampacity and breaker space. The physical, you want to make sure you have enough, you can handle enough current, and you can handle the physical amount of breakers, etc. If you've got a 200 amp service and a small to medium home, you should be able to electrify everything on the 200 amp. If you've got a 100 amp, it becomes more challenging, but not impossible to avoid doing an electrical upgrade. Some of the strategies you could look at is making sure that you're using high efficiency equipment. You want to make sure that you've got the higher efficiency equipment you select, the less current it's going to pull. You want to look at combined units potentially. So a washer/dryer on one circuit. You can look at a range instead of getting a separate cooktop and stove. Right sizing your HVAC, make sure you're using efficiency to reduce the size of your system. Circuit sharing plugs. So here's an example here where you can plug this into a standard 240 volt service. And then you've got two plugs where you can plug a dryer and your electric vehicle into it. When the dryer turns on, the EV pauses its charging until the load is complete, and then it switches back over to the EV. So this can pretty quickly, reduce some of the electrical requirements and save on some electrical work too. And then tandem breakers, so the skinnier breakers to be able to free up more space. You can, in terms of how you can analyze whether you have enough capacity, you can look at your annual hourly energy use. This is applicable if you don't have solar. And then you could also look at the watt diet calculator. It's a great tool that Tom Cabot up north has put together that goes through the National Electric Code, and you can go through that and walk through how much capacity you have on your panel and look at what the impacts would be with various different changes. So for us, luckily, we had a 200 amp service already. We did use some tandem breakers to free up the space and avoid a new panel board. We had multiple electrician visits, so we did this over 5 years. If I were to do it again, I would have definitely streamlined it and tried to reduce the number of visits, avoid the rework, just come out and had it all planned out from the onset. So the great thing about electrification is it expands your ability to cover your energy use with solar. Rooftop solar really improves the economics of electrification. It makes it a lot more affordable in order to electrify. We typically don't want to be over generating solar from an economic standpoint. So it's much better to convert our appliances from gas to electric and supply that electric with our rooftop solar. You do want to consider future electrification efforts. So if you're about to put in a solar system, you might want to think about what electrification you're going to be doing in the future and how that might change your load. So we did an initial installation. When we first moved in, we put in about a 3 kW system that met all of our needs at the time, which was the only kind of electrification effort we had was the space heating. And then I attempted to plan for it by getting a larger inverter. So we do have a larger inverter. We didn't have to replace that when we did the expansion. We about doubled our system. We did end up with a few panels on the east side, which is less effective from a generation standpoint, less desirable. Some of the lessons that I picked up from this is to make sure you're upsizing conduit. Because that, even if your inverter is large, that doesn't mean your conduit's large enough to handle your expansion. So you want to have that to avoid rework. And then also consider higher efficiency panels, especially if you're thinking about doing expansion in the future. You want to make sure you can maximize as much as you can on the south and potentially the west orientations. And then in December of 2020, I called up SDG&E. I said, we don't need your gas anymore. You could come turn it off. And they did that. You can see here this pole here. Couldn't use gas if I wanted to, which I don't. And now we've got, there's a big movement a few decades ago for all electric homes in the Northwest. And actually I found out there's some original ones in San Diego. Found this medallion home on eBay, this little medallion for all electric homes, and got that put up. But wait, there's a little more. The gas was shut off. I realized we still got a propane gas grill, which does provide some flexibility, and wanted to see whether I could take this a little bit further. So got an electric infrared grill. It does seem to do the job. It works for me at least. Works for vegan food. I can't speak to anything else. But maybe it's a little slower, but it definitely meets my needs. Let's see. And don't forget about other energy efficiency efforts as you're going through this. There's some really great low flow high performance shower heads out there, which really helps on the water heating side, making sure you have enough capacity and reducing your energy consumption there. So we ended up, well, we've got a Nebbia, which is actually they have really great shower heads below 1 GPM, which standard ultra low flow is 1.5, but they've got some great products out there. Your LEDs, of course, daylighting. We put in a solar tube last year. Make sure you're controlling your heat pump efficiently. So smart thermostats. We had a overheating issue in one room, and we were able to solve that with a ceiling fan. Whole house fan is great for this, especially this climate, and especially these last couple weeks. Put in a radiant barrier to help reduce reduce attic temperature. And of course, don't forget your insulation. Don't forget your high performing windows. And just a quick cost benefit. So it's interesting. I did all of this. I did a few calcs along the way to try and choose from one or the other, but my day job is to try and justify what I feel in many cases is the right thing to do. And so I just did the right thing to do. And now the last few weeks I kind of gone back, I looked through it, put some calcs together. So, I put together the project cost, the associated solar. So how much solar did I need in order to offset that gas? Any incentives, and then business as usual. For example, the water heater, that thing had to be replaced any day anyway. That was going to be replaced soon. For the range dryer, that probably had a few years left, so I didn't give it its full credit for a replacement. And then what is the effective premium to go all electric? First year savings, then payback. So you'll see, total project cost is about $11,000, another $4,000 to put in the solar to meet those needs, $1,500 of incentives, and then considering a lot of this stuff, I would have had to do something anyway. The effective premium was about $6,500. So overall, first year energy savings about $400 if we assume a 3% escalation of energy costs per year. We're at about a 13-year payback. So, definitely not, 1 or 2 years is not, it's not a very, very rapid payback, right? But it also, is going to pay for itself in the life of most of these products. Best payback was on the water heater, followed by the space heating. And I would say a lot of what made these great is I replaced them when I needed to, I was going to be doing something anyway, or a lot of something anyway. Range dryer, the payback's pretty long. I think, there's just not a lot of gas being used. We were at a point where we were only using the dryer and the range when the plug-in wasn't working enough or didn't do enough. We didn't have enough capacity with just a plug-in induction, and we turned on the stove. We were only using 1 or 2 therms a month of gas, and we were below the minimum threshold. So we got charged $4 a month for that.
Everything okay, Tom? Okay, what I may do when we get back, Tom, not sure why he stepped away. We can try to answer some questions. Although Tom, maybe we can together we can do that as well. Okay, it looks like Tom signed off, but we had some good questions, and then we'll wait a few minutes to see if Tom comes back on. But first one, Corey Downs asked, would a heat pump water heater be able to work indoors like a heat pump water heater? Anybody want to take that? Tara, do you want to take that, or Wendy?
Well, our install was also in an exterior closet, but many of these, many people have their water heaters in the garage. That's not a heated interior space, but it's certainly an interior space. Mm-hmm. I can't speak to something inside the house itself, but I would imagine it's a matter of ducting. But these things are loud.
Mhm.
So I wouldn't want it, personally, I wouldn't want it inside.
Yeah, and they have to vent outside anyway, right? I mean, you have to basically, the air needs to be vented outside.
Absolutely.
So you wouldn't want to, you know, I think Tom did talk a little bit about what of his where some of that air did come back in,
Yeah.
but usually you want to take it out. Yeah.
Robert, if I could chime in, this is Doug Cott. So it doesn't necessarily need to be vented. It's not combustion, but what you do need is sufficient heat capacity in the volume of air. So if you were going to do it inside, which you typically wouldn't, right? From a space heating standpoint, you know, that let's say you want to bring heat into your home and you're going to use the heat pump to draw heat from the outdoor colder ambient air, but still draw heat from it and convert it to heat and bring it into your home to provide comfort heating in the space. If you were going to have that same heat exchange in the house, it would be essentially removing heat from the volume of the space. So typically you'll see in hot water, you'll have it maybe in a closet in a, you know, if it's a townhouse or condo or something like that, it could be in the unit. And there's a way that that's okay, or more likely it's in the garage or some other even outdoor unit like Tom had there. So it's going to work differently, or rather the time of use for heat pumps for space heating or cooling are going to work differently. And you don't want it fighting against the kind of comfort you want to make inside the conditioned environment and conditioned envelope. So that's part of it. The sort of, well, that's the biggest part of it. Now, I think there's another part of the question there about.
Well, also, real quick, Doug, Tom has made his way back, so
oh, great, good.
We can kind of segue back to this. Thank you very much for speaking up. That's totally and we'll
fantastic. Yeah.
More. All right, thank you.
Sorry about that, everyone. All right, so yeah, I think the upshot was, you know, definitely try and replace these things as they're going out, but you want to be able to plan for it. And with some of these devices like the range and dryer combination, it just makes so much more sense to do this right from the beginning. So this really speaks to the need to have these all electric ordinances where we can reduce the you know, natural gas infrastructure by $5,000 to $10,000 per home, and make it even more cost effective to go all electric. So starting your journey, I think the best thing to do is just to dip your foot into it, loan out a portable induction cooktop. Go to ehomecooktops.com, check one out for a few weeks, see if you like it. If you like it and you're not ready, you can't afford to go full, you know, to get a range, just, you know, consider purchasing one of those and do most of your cooking on that, right? We're all, you know, a lot of us are on a journey to electrify in some way or another. The next thing I'd recommend doing is determining the age of the water heater. The HVAC equipment, appliances, helps you come up with a plan for when do you expect to have to replace these, to make sure that, you know, if your water heater goes out tomorrow, you know, a lot of people, it's gas. A lot of people don't want to deal with the headache of trying to figure out different options. They just want their hot water back. So you want to plan for it. Determine your timing approach. Are you going to be doing everything upon failure? Are you going to expedite some of this? How are you going to prioritize this? I would suggest on overall impact, on cost, carbon, health. You can see the water heater and the space heater had big, you know, cost savings, cost effectiveness. You know, the oven has a, you know, getting your gas cooking out has a health impact. And then you want to, you know, strategize your electric panel needs for all electric, size solar with future needs in mind, and then get some no-cost help from us here at the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition. You can go to bid.ly/helpmeelectrify. And I will move this on to Tara. Thank you so much.
Great, thanks, Tom. I'm Tara Hammond, she, her, hers. I see a lot of friendly faces online here. For those who don't know me, I'm a full-time climate activist, and I was interested in going all electric, obviously for the climate aspect, as well as the health and some savings as well. And I had gone solar. My husband and I have a home just over 1,000 square feet. October 2019, we installed a 4.1 kilowatt solar power system. That's in AC. We have a 100 amp service panel. So while that system was designed to offset over 100% of our needs with the anticipation of an electric vehicle and switching over other appliances to electric, which would increase our electrical consumption, due to our service panel at that time, we weren't able to install a larger system without doing a service panel upgrade. So we maxed out what we were able to do there. And we went with 14 LG solar panels. We did 325 watt. I know Tom mentioned maximizing high efficiency. For us, it was offsetting so much. We didn't feel like we needed to spend more money for the high efficiency panels. So that's what worked for us. Storage, it's a battery capable inverter. And we got that because we got the LG Chem. They've rebranded as LG Energy Solution. They have a 10 kilowatt hour residential energy storage unit. And tonight at 9 p.m., we have a scheduled power outage, our first since going solar. So we'll see if our battery kicks in and provides us power through 7 a.m. as expected. And since we have a small home, we don't use that much energy. About 95% of our home will be able to be backed up by that residential energy storage unit. I'm happy to, I'm going to lead the breakout session to talk more about backup power, since it will depend on how much you're using. A typical question is how long will it last, but it will depend on what you're using. If you could go to the next slide, please. So last February, we got a used RAV4 all electric. I wish they still made these. I had driven this car at work years back. It's a great car. Unfortunately, it was a small partnership with Tesla and Toyota, and they only produced about 1,700 in the US. And fully charged, it gets 110 miles. We did need to have an electrician come install a level 2 charger, and it takes about 5 hours for us to get a full charge. And so we charge it during the day when our solar power is running. And so it's charged by the sun. And there's our dog Junior enjoying it. And there's Junior again. So our most recent project in January, we converted a gas cooktop to an induction cooktop and electric oven. I reached out to Tom and got a very similar model as him. It was one of the less expensive models out there. This was available at Home Depot as well as other stores. And actually I'd been tracking it back in November, and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, they became unavailable at many, many stores. So it took a while, then it was on back order for us to get. We did have to cap the gas. We decided to cap it in the wall because we wouldn't have had enough space. The oven would have been sticking out into our kitchen had we not done that, but you could have just capped it right where it was sticking out of the wall. We had plumbers come out, and 2 different ones tried convincing us to leave gas and what if new homeowners want gas. And we said we are confident that we did not need the gas. We are going to be happy all electric. And so they fulfilled our request to cap it in the wall there. And for the oven, we did need to have an electrician install a 240 volt outlet. Otherwise, the oven wouldn't have been able to turn on. And so our last updates that we are going to do is going to get that electric water heater. In order to do so, we will need to have a service panel upgrade. And so it took a couple months to have SDG&E approve it. They then asked for photos. They sent someone out. They then needed more photos. And we are now approved. And so we'll be scheduling the electrician to come out to upgrade the service panel. From there, we'll be able to upgrade the water heater. And at that same time, we'll want to do our dryer so we can have access to a dryer. Although with these sunny days, I try to hang dry as much as possible. And then at that point, we'll be all electric. We did have 2 gas small heaters in the home that we just disconnected and felt like we'll bundle up in winter versus changing those to electric. So that was our journey. I'm happy to answer questions afterwards, or if you join the solar and storage breakout session, I'm happy to talk to you more. I did want to note, while the price of solar has come down substantially, solar isn't cheap, and energy storage is still quite expensive. There is the self-generation incentive program, the state rebate for storage, which is declining. Most families, though, in San Diego have an electric bill of about $200 is the average. Anyone with a bill north of $150, there's solar financing, which can have solar offset your electric bill and your new solar payment be less than what you were paying SDG&E. And so solar can make sense even for those who couldn't afford that cash purchase. One thing to note on solar, the rules right now are being renegotiated at the California Public Utilities Commission. Net metering is this agreement. Net metering 3.0, the third version, is being debated. And so if you are considering going solar, I would recommend getting in under net metering 2.0. We don't quite know yet when that cutoff will be, but we do anticipate the rules will be less attractive for new solar customers going forward. And happy to have anyone who's interested in learning more or getting engaged with that. I'll drop a link into the chat. And then solar storage should be accessible to non-homeowners as well. And so we've been advocating to have solar for renters via something called on-bill solar financing, which the state of Hawaii does. And there are other opportunities such as community solar programs that other states do where renters can pay to own a portion of a community solar project that's built in the community and then get solar savings that way. And with our local community choice energy programs, San Diego Community Power, as well as Clean Energy Alliance, there are opportunities to be advocating for different programs to help everyone adopt solar storage, these water heaters as well, in addition to other electric appliances, electric bikes. And so I encourage all of you to stay engaged, and when there are opportunities that you can speak up. These are public meetings where you're able to make a comment. And I'm sure the San Diego Building Electrification Coalition will be able to share those opportunities. So that is it for me, and appreciate you all being here today and looking forward to connecting with some of you during the next breakout session.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Mihalik. I'm also a 350 volunteer, and I also see many familiar faces here. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My husband and I have embraced building electrification as a path toward helping our environment and meeting our climate goals primarily. We live in a 70-year-old mixed fuel home in La Mesa. It's been renovated during the 25 years we've owned it, and it now has 2 stories and a total of 2,600 square feet. We installed solar in 3 separate tranches over a dozen years and now have an 8.4 kilowatt system on our roof. We upgraded our electric panel to 200 amps in conjunction with the second solar install in 2017. At that time, we were looking at electric vehicles, so this was in anticipation of that. We got the car in 2018, and at that point, our 5 kilowatt solar system was right-sized for our usage. Last year was the big one for our electrification retrofit. The gas water heater needed to be replaced, and we used that as the impetus to also install a heat pump HVAC system ahead of its end of service and an induction cooktop. We thought it was a good idea to combine all of these appliances in one install, thinking we would economize on installing the electrical circuits to 3 separate areas in the home and have one contractor responsible for the whole job. That didn't happen. The HVAC companies and the plumbing companies that we talked to that installed heat pumps had their own electrical install, and they didn't want anything to do with the kitchen. So our best bet was to find one company that could do both heat pump systems. We got 4 bids. 3 were generally in the same price ballpark, and 1 was almost 40% higher. It was a real outlier. One of those 4 bids was broken down by line item. The others were just a lump sum with a descriptive of the work that they would do. That line item bid provided a lot of insight, and we used it to guide our discussions with all the bidders. We did ask each one for a line item bid. We got it out of just 1, and we're very thankful for that. Our selection, the contractor that we selected, was based on price, their experience with heat pumps, because I think as Tom mentioned, you talk to plumbers or people that are involved with installing hot water heaters, there aren't many who have had a lot of experience with heat pump installs. So that was one criteria. And also we were sensitive to the equipment itself. We've got a big house, it's 2 stories. We wanted zone capability, high efficiency, all of those things. So we did some homework on the actual units, and that was part of our selection criteria. Both systems were involved by one contractor in December of last year. When we were doing all of our research, SDBEC had not quite been formed, so we didn't have them as a resource to go through and help us with all of these things. I wish we had. So the next thing that we have to do that hasn't been done is to get that cooktop installed. We did get the electrical, we hired an electrician separately, and they put in the 240 volts last year. And now we're just waiting for the cooktop to get installed, and then we will turn the gas off at the meter. Next slide. So as I mentioned, our first install, well, we've been installing solar over 12 years. The first install was in 2009. We put in 8 bifacial panels. These make use of reflective light and produce energy on both sides. This was over an upstairs deck, and we used them as the deck covering. So it was very nice, and it was just 1.6 kilowatts, but it was our way to say, you know, to nod to solar. Then in 2017, as I mentioned, we were getting serious about getting an electric car. We added another 10 panels for a total 18 panel, 5.2 kilowatt system. And as I mentioned before, that was adequate for what we were doing at the time. I apologize, the picture in the middle is not the same orientation as the picture on the right. Right is showing you where north-south is. So in 2017, we took advantage of the balance of our south-facing and west-facing rooftop capability. This year, we decided we were going to just, because we haven't finished, you know, we haven't had a year full of using these new electric appliances, and we're not sure what the future holds in terms of other things. We decided we would just consume the rest of the roof and add what we could to maximize our solar capability. So we added 8 more panels. These are on the east. I don't have the use of the pointer, but the roof, this is a sketch of all the panels. The new panels are array 1 and array 2, but they're on the east side. And now we have the 26 panel 8.4 kilowatt system. Next slide, please. So we actually started decarbonizing, you know, when Tom was putting in his HVAC, electrical HVAC, we put up a clothesline, and we use this for all our needs. We do not use a dryer in the house, period. And in La Mesa, you can do that. As I mentioned, we got the EV in 2018, and very thankful that at that time we put in a 240 volt charger in the garage so we can get 30 miles per hour charging on that car, which it's very good for us. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, we put our hot water heater in a closet outside. That's where the gas heater was. And you can see it's a tight space, and we don't leave the door open. We have a door with a fixed louver panel, 20 by 20 panel. This is a Bradford White heat pump, hot water heater. And we talked to the manufacturer about the enclosed space and the venting and you know, air circulation. And they assured us that would be fine. We leave this on heat pump. We don't use hybrid, and it's worked just fine. It's been installed for about 6 months. And by the way, the louvers was an extra expense for us. That's not something that the installer did. Next slide. So this is a look at our HVAC system. This is the outdoor unit, and I just wanted to show how much smaller it is than the unit that we had previously. The old pad is there. You can see it from both the front view and also top-down view. The new unit is about 1 meter by meter square, kind of, and then the width is like a little over a foot. So it's very compact for people who have tight spaces. This works quite well. We have smart thermostats. We put them in an upstairs location and a downstairs location. And rather than trust the Wi-Fi connections, we hardwired both into the system. So that's what we've got. They do still communicate Wi-Fi, but they are hardwired. We kept the existing ducting primarily for cost savings. We also contracted for HERS testing. That's home energy rating system, which is required when you're putting in these HVAC systems. We did that on our own and saved several $100s by not going through the contractor to get that done. And they're supposed to be independent from the contractor anyway. So that worked out quite well for us. Next slide. So some of the tips, some of the things we learned, yes, now that you have them, please take advantage of the Building Electrification Coalition resources. They're awesome. As Tom said, trying to think ahead and hiring an electrician once for everything you're going to do makes a whole lot of sense. For instance, we have a gas fireplace right now. We're not using it. We will not use it as long as it's gas, but it may be that we want to have an electric one. We have not yet installed that electric outlet. So that's one more cost that we will incur down the road. The same thing with the solar. Again, as Tom mentioned, we did this over a dozen years, and we had no idea what the future would hold. But if you can sit back and see what your needs might be, do it at once if you can. I already mentioned hers. And then the rebates, that's another thing. The point of sale or after sale, they change. So make sure you do your homework on that, so you know what you're getting. And I think that's it for me. I'll be happy to answer any questions in the chat. And I guess we're going to go on to SDBEC resources, and somebody's going to talk this chart.
Yeah. So, Tom, do you want to go over these?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we have our training and tech working group through the SDBEC. We've created a no-cost technical assistance support for electrification. So you can go to bit.ly/helpmeelectrify and put in your information, and we'll walk you through as much as we can. You could learn more about the SDBC at sdbc.org and follow us on social media at SDBE Coalition. And I think we want to try and do a screenshotted group photo real quick.
Tom, if you could stop sharing to allow the
Yeah.
Zoom to show all the boxes, that would be great. And, we'll
And
break
while we're
out.
getting this going, we've got plenty of questions in the chat, but we're also a little bit behind schedule. So do you think it might be a good idea to see if people want to go to the breakout rooms they feel those questions can be answered in once we do this? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I can stick around in the main room if there's any larger, higher level questions.
Perfect. All right.
Okay, great. If those who feel comfortable putting your camera on, we'll take a photo. I'm going to do two since we have 2 slides of people. All right, 1, 2, 3. And we'll jump to the other slide. Let's say all electric. 1,
All electric.
2, 3. All right, we are good with the screenshots.
So now we're gonna have some Q&A opportunity. We're gonna have 4 different breakout rooms, one on HVAC, one on water heating, one on solar storage, and one on cooking. So feel free to join the breakout room that makes sense for you.
Yeah, so I've got that set up. So they should have titles on them, as Tom said. So if not, if you're not in the right room, back out and we can auto assign you to the room you'd like to go. So so I'm going to open them up right now. And again, if you have any issues, just kind of pop back out and we'll get you to the right room. All right.
And make sure there's a Center for Community Energy has some webinars coming up, going in depth on these topics too. If you have an opportunity to check them out, look it up. I'll shoot the link in.
It looks like people are starting to join the rooms. So Tom, did you see the breakout rooms that look right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep, we got. Perfect. All right, I'm going to stick around in this room if anybody has any questions. To me, I see Wendy's here too. If anyone has any questions for Wendy as well.
And Tom, I was putting those questions into a document, so I can send that out to all of us, and we can answer them via email as well. All right, so Ariel, are you on? Do you want to unmute yourself, Ariel? Oh, I think she already went in. Okay.
Looks like she found one, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom and Robert, I wasn't able to get into the breakout session either. I don't know what I was.
Which one would you like to go to?
I'm sorry.
Which one do you want to go to?
I'll do the solar storage one.
All right, there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so for those of you who are still on, like Susan and Elizabeth, are you here to answer questions or ask questions to Tom and Wendy directly? And if so, go for it.
I'm not sure if I heard an answer to my question before. What effect does the heat pump have on the humidity level?
Ah, okay, Tom. Did you hear that?
What effects does a heat pump have on the community level?
Humidity level.
Yeah, you did that. The humidity level. Does it reduce
Oh,
humidity like AC does?
it's a good question. It wouldn't change. Well, it's not going to wring moisture out like an air conditioner. So it's not going to actively pull moisture or add moisture to the air. So Robert, I'm gonna go hop into some of these rooms and see if anybody's got any questions.
Yeah, no problem. And
I
I'll
need
stay
help.
here if anybody there. So I know Dan's with us. Josh or Mary or Elizabeth, Nelson, just let me know if you guys want to break out into any of the rooms or if you have any questions for anybody, let us know. Hello. And Susan, just an FYI, nothing else is going to happen in this particular room. Everything's happening in the breakout room. So I've been more than willing to put you in a breakout room so you can join the rest of the people if you want.
I suppose I could join the breakout room. I just couldn't figure out which one would be the best one to join.
Okay, so we have water heating, HVAC, cooking, and then the solar battery storage one.
Guess I can join the HVAC.
Okay, I'll send you that way.
Uh,
Okay, you've already done it. Okay, cool.